Christian Louboutin. In 1991, he opened his first boutique in Paris after years drawing shoes for other fashion houses. Within 2 years, he had created the most recognizable signature in footwear history. By accident. In 1992, he was looking at a prototype, and something felt off. His assistant had red nail polish on her desk. He grabbed it and painted the sole. The shoe transformed instantly. What was ordinary became iconic. That red sole, Pantone 18-1663 to be exact, wasn't a branding strategy built over years. It was an improvised decision in an atelier that he later formalized and registered as a trademark in 2007. Technically, the Louboutin DNA lives in the combination of extreme heel height, dramatically elongated lines, and high-impact materials, patent leather, satin, crystal embellishments, always crowned by that red underneath. The sole functions like an inverted spotlight. The part nobody should see is exactly what everyone notices the moment you walk away. And then came the lawsuits. Louboutin spent years in court defending his right to own a color, against Yves Saint Laurent, against other houses. The argument, can a single brand legally possess a color in the world of shoes? The red sole isn't just a detail. It's the sound of a corridor turning into a runway.
Guccio. Gucci started the brand in Florence in 1906, but the origin story that matters happened years earlier, in London, where he worked as a luggage porter at the Savoy Hotel, carrying bags, observing aristocrats, studying how wealth dressed, moved, and traveled. He brought all of that back to Florence. In 1953, after his death, his sons launched the Gucci Horsebit Loafer, a leather slip-on with a metal horsebit hardware across the vamp, 2 rings connected by a bar, a miniaturized version of actual equestrian equipment. At the time, loafers were considered casual, relaxed, informal. The subversion was putting that shoe in a boardroom, in the White House, on the feet of people who had nothing casual about their lives. Technically, the horsebit balances the ease of a slip-on with a structured upper, premium leather, and a philosophy of effortless dressing that has barely changed in 70 years. It became what fashion calls a quiet uniform, the shoe that says nothing and communicates everything. In 1984, the horsebit loafer entered the permanent collection of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, a shoe barely 30 years old, in a museum, permanently. While everyone argues about Gucci logos and sneakers, the royal code of status is still that loafer, the shoe that says, I already arrived. I don't need to prove anything.
Manolo Blahnik. Manolo Blahnik never formally studied shoemaking. He learned by visiting factories, talking to craftsmen, watching technicians translate drawings into leather until he understood the entire process himself. No degree, no apprenticeship in the traditional sense, just obsessive observation. In the early 1970s, platform shoes dominated fashion. Heavy, chunky, theatrical. In 1971, Blahnik went in the exact opposite direction. He revived the thin stiletto heel, almost as a personal manifesto against what he called boorish and clunky footwear. He designed shoes for Ossie Clark's runway, borrowed £2,000, bought a small shop called Zapata in London, and started building his own world. Technically, the Manolo difference lives in proportion control. The angle of the heel, the curve of the arch, the length of the toe. Every measurement calculated to elongate the leg and keep the foot surprisingly stable at dangerous heights. He draws everything by hand. Small architectural structures, then follows the translation into leather, satin, or embroidery closely. For decades after he became famous, Manolo still spent most of his time inside his own shop, fitting clients one by one, like a tailor who happened to work with shoes. Before he was a television symbol of desire, he was a man against the trend, the designer who brought back the thin heel when the entire industry wanted platform.
Berluti was founded in Paris in 1895 by Alessandro Berluti, an Italian craftsman who became known for the whole cut, a shoe carved from a single piece of leather, no visible seams, the upper as one continuous sculpture wrapped around the foot. For nearly a century, the house refined that tradition quietly. Then came Olga Berluti, and then came the patina.
In the 1990s, Olga developed the Venetia leather, a full-grain hide selected from specific skins, treated through a combined mineral and vegetable tanning process that makes it extraordinarily supple and receptive to color. From that leather came the Berluti patina, craftsmen applying layers of pigments, waxes, and oils in sessions that can last hours, building depth of color that mimics decades of natural aging, lunar greens, petroleum blues, near black burgundies. The detail that stops people? Many of the most dramatic color effects only fully emerge after several hours of manual massage. Each pair ends up slightly different from any other pair in the same model. Not by mistake, by design. A well-worn Berluti doesn't shine like new patent leather. It shines like antique furniture polished by generations, deep, alive, and impossible to replicate quickly. It's the shoe that signals not just money, but time, patience, a near-obsessive attention to things most people walk right past.
John Lobb. John Lobb begins as a 19th-century English cobbler making boots for the British elite on St. James's Street in London, and becomes the maximum reference in bespoke footwear for generations of aristocrats, bankers, and heads of state. But here's what almost nobody outside the world of shoe obsessives knows. Today, there are effectively two John Lobbs. In 1976, the French branch of the house was acquired by Hermès. The group kept the name, the aesthetic, the reputation, and built a ready-to-wear line of extremely refined shoes produced in a Paris atelier. Meanwhile, the original family workshop in London continued independently, making fully bespoke shoes one pair at a time the same way they always had. Same name, two entirely different realities. The London John Lobb is a conversation. Hours with a master craftsman, custom lasts sculpted specifically for your foot, a waiting period measured in months. The Paris John Lobb is a boutique inside a global luxury conglomerate, translating that English DNA into small series production with premium leathers and Goodyear construction. Not every old name in luxury is a single story. Sometimes it's a family tree with branches nobody told you about. Maison Corthay. Pierre Corthay founded Maison Corthay in Paris in 1990, after completing the formation of the Compagnon du Devoir, one of the most demanding craft apprenticeship systems in France, and working inside houses like John Lobb and Berluti. In 2008, the French government awarded him the title of Maître d'Art in bootmaking. He is, to this day, the only shoemaker in the world to hold that distinction. He opened the atelier with minimal capital, taking over a former equestrian boot workshop a few steps from Place Vendôme, and slowly built a global clientele of people who specifically seek out what is almost too sharp to be conventional. The Corthay technical signature is in the silhouette, extremely narrow lasts, elongated and sensual toe shapes, and an aggressive use of artistic patinas applied in layers. The Arca model, created in 1991, a two-eyelet derby with reversed lacing, became the house's calling card. Classic enough to be formal, strange enough to be recognized across a room. Pierre's path is the story. Trained in one of the hardest craft systems in France, he builds something globally known from a small atelier by sheer force of technical obsession. A Corthay doesn't whisper. It cuts through the air. It's the choice of someone who wants the suit to speak quietly and the shoe to do the talking.
Stefano Bemer. Stefano Bemer started making shoes in Florence in 1983 with a declared ambition to create the perfect Italian shoe. Over 2 decades, he built a reputation as a craftsman obsessed with form, balance, and longevity, attracting artists, designers, and quietly famous clients who found their way to his workshop. One of them was Daniel Day-Lewis. Between 1999 and 2000, after winning his second Academy Award, Day-Lewis spent approximately 8 to 10 months as an apprentice in Bemer's atelier, learning to cut leather, stitch soles, and build shoes from scratch. He temporarily left Hollywood to learn a craft with his hands. Technically, Bemer shoes are a laboratory of classical construction, hand-stitching, high-quality leathers sourced for specific projects, refined lasts adjusted by millimeters in bespoke commissions. After Stefano's death in 2012, the brand was taken over by Tommaso Milani, who moved the atelier into a former chapel in Florence and transformed the workshop into a training center for the next generation of craftsmen. A Stefano Bemer isn't just an expensive shoe. It's a certificate that someone knows a specific chapter of Florentine craft history that most luxury consumers have never heard mentioned. The shoe that an Oscar winner chose to learn how to make with his own hand.
Yohei Fukuda. Every brand in this video is European, except the last one. Yohei Fukuda is a Japanese shoemaker who, quietly and without advertising, became one of the most respected names in men's footwear among the people who know what to look for. He studied and worked in the United Kingdom before returning to Japan to open his own atelier in Tokyo. His annual production? Approximately 100 bespoke pairs, around 200 ready-to-wear, total. Each bespoke pair can take between 120 and 130 hours of work. The obsession is with symmetry, the curve of the instep, the definition of the toe, the millimeter decisions that accumulate into something that many collectors describe as too perfect for ordinary pavement. The detail that defines everything. Despite being virtually unknown to the general public, Fukuda maintains a global waiting list of clients. Men who wait patiently, the same way someone waits for an independent watchmaker with a 2-year backlog. Not because of advertising, because of what passes between people who understand what they're looking at. A Yohei Fukuda is the exact opposite of a logo. Almost nobody on the street recognizes it. But the person who does will stop walking.